you know what? I forgot to share it out to our the actual movie channel. Hey, True Believers, England team here with Dalton, the Authenticator.
Hello, everyone. I'm not on camera because I'm having to hold my phone sideways so that it stays on the charger. My phone charger is at that phase where it only likes to charge at certain angles, and I didn't feel like giving you all vertigo by being sideways.
Already, and I guess it's now we're sharing out stage. All right, so we could be one of the latest 2024 list. We're going to do the best, I guess, Sunday afternoons. You said you're available, which is good. But for now, we're going to be talking about what we thought were the worst films. Our top 10. I do have runner-ups. I put them up there just in case you didn't show up earlier. I figured I would do this one. So before we get started, hello to Stug and Tevia. Apparently, we have 2 people watching. Woo! All righty. Hopefully, that'll pick up as we go. But yeah, let's get started on this. At the very least, I'm going to go through my runner-ups here, and I don't care how long this takes. We've got a couple hours anyway until the next live. But I don't know how, if you've seen these, by all means, comment on them. My number 20 would be a movie called Afraid. And this is about a family, what is his name, John Cho or something like that. His family gets like a theory, but it's a super artificial intelligence theory that starts controlling their household and everything. And goodness gracious, this could have gone so many different ways. And look, I understand. I try not to look at the preview and get an expectation of what the movie should be before I go see it. I think that's a horrible way of doing things. It's going to ultimately lead to disappointment. In this case, I was thinking, is this like an alien intelligence or something? And streaming on all these. No, it's just bad and it's boring and it's poor reactions. We will talk about my number 19 a little bit later, as it's going to show up higher up on your list. And that's Gladiator 2. My 18 was a movie called Challenger. Hey, look, I'm always A-okay with everything that goes on here. All I hope for, though, is there's a better story and it's more interesting. Challenger's bored the piss out of me. And boring is that dang horrible. So 1918. My number 17 is Exhibiting Forgiveness. This is a mystery movie. Gail and I go to these AMC hosts mystery movies where they say Monday night, come see a movie at 7 o'clock. You have no idea what it is. And this is this man goes to help his sick mom, and his absentee father shows up, and it was so over the top sappy, and it was just, my gosh, it's one thing to try to make a point, it's another one to kill him.
Hammer the emotions into the audience's head.
Exactly, yeah, it was so hand-fisted. Let's pour 1987. This is number 16. Number 16. Look, I am A-okay with making a movie and then a play and then a movie out of that play. It can be done well. Producers and Little Shop of Horrors, love them, especially Little Shop of Horrors. However, earlier this year, they did Mean Girls, the musical.
Oh God!
Yeah, this is a movie based on a stage play based on the original movie. I like the original movie. For a while, I owned the original movie, and I've seen it many, many times. I think it's funny with that. This is so wrong. And I'm not, I don't care about like race swaps or what, but
in other words, they tried to make fetch happen, and it didn't work.
Did, and it failed spectacular. I heard that this was somewhat of a hit on Broadway, but the songs are horrible. Now, there's a lot of talent on stage here, or on screen, I should say, but there's no charisma, and that's the big problem. Nobody in this movie even matches the charisma of anyone from the first movie at all. So it's definitely false. Let's see. My number 15 is a Shudder horror film called Destroy All Neighbors. And this is just a guy who gets annoyed by his neighbor, and they get into a little bit of war, and he finds out his neighbor is a little bit more than human, or a little bit less than human. I don't know how you'd put it, but more human. And there was a film that came out in 2023 about a guy who rents a house that's possessed. Wonderful film, loved it. This one, I sometimes love Shudder originals, not so much. Number 14 is a shark movie. I love a good shark movie.
This is not a good one, though, I assume.
Not a good one at all. The premise of this one is a plane crashes at the bottom of the ocean, and the survivors are trying to figure how are they going to get to the surface. At the same time, sharks attack. There you go. That's it. Goodness. Silly is good, stupid is bad. That's basically where this lands. Let me see what we got here. Hello, Patrick Sargent. What's up, E? Just to let you know, your mic sounds staticky. I am sorry, guys. I don't know what's going on here. I do know my wife, for some reason, has been unplugging my microphone.
Are the pop filter synced with the mic? Is that maybe what happened? Did it get unplugged and they fell out of sync or something?
Default is okay. How about now?
Better.
Okay. Hoping. Is it still staticky and all that kind of stuff?
It's a little bit staticky, but it's not super noticeable.
Okay. How about now?
Okay, that's better.
All right, there we go. Hard for me to say what was the worst movie, as if I hear from sources I trust, skip the bad ones. Did hear there were a few contenders this year. Yeah, thank you. All righty, there you go. Okay, so now that we got that out of the way, thankfully, the first part where people are showing up, it's going to be bad. Let's see, 20, 19, 18, 17, 16, 15, 14. My number 13 is a drama called Miller's Girl. I will watch anything that girl is in. I don't know. She's just a pretty one. So anywho, I watched this one. Actually, I also like I like Martin Freeman, and I was looking forward to this, and it just turned out to be an incredibly point. You know, when you're watching a movie, I don't know if you guys have ever had this where you're watching a movie and all of a sudden you're watching a movie and why is this movie made? Like what was the purpose of this film?
For who was this made, and what was the logic behind the making of it in the first place?
Well, if you're going to make a comedy, you know you're making it to make people laugh. Okay. If you're making a horror, to scare people, an action to thrill people, you know, so forth and so on. Why was this movie made? What was the point, and what was the emotion they were trying to get?
What was the end goal in mind here?
And it absolutely there was no answer to that. My number 12 was another mystery film called Skincare, starring Elizabeth Banks. She plays an aging makeup guru in Los Angeles, and somebody, a younger guy, moves another skincare thing across from her store, and they have a fight. My Miller's Girl review can go right to this one and give it a little bit of a minus, because instead of Jenna Ortega, you're looking at Elizabeth Banks. Number 11 is on a lot of people's top 10 lists and a lot of people's number 1 film. It did not make my top 10, and that is Borderlands. Went to see this, I have no emotional connection to Borderlands. None whatsoever. I haven't played the game. I heard that characters are de-aged and made to be older. What just out? And Jack Black was bad, by the way.
We will talk more about Borderlands when we get to, I think, my number 6.
It's higher, huh? Yeah. But for me, I went and saw this, and I thought, it's better than sitting in the movie theater and watching a blank screen for the same amount of time. That's the best I can say about this. It is, yeah. Beyond that,
I don't even know these characters, and I could tell that Kevin Hart was miscast. And I saw it's like, oh, we want you to go and rescue this girl because she's the chosen one. I was like, oh, okay, so the choice is going to be Kate Blanchett's the chosen one, and of course it was. And I said that at the very beginning.
Right on cue.
This movie, I recommend this film to you. I truly do, especially if you're a Borderlands fan. You have to see how much of a fail this is. Alrighty, let's get to our top 10s. Since I spoke already, I'll let you get to your. No, I'll let you start with your number 10. Let me remove the Borderland here. And what do you have, sir? What's your number 10?
My number 10 is Dune Part 2.
You're on your own.
I am aware. I apparently am the only person on the planet who detests Denis Villeneuve's way of adapting this series. But that being said, I still detest the way Denis Villeneuve adapts this series. Because he's... Okay, for those that don't know, I hate Christopher Nolan with something approaching a passion in everything he's done except for The Dark Knight. And Denis Villeneuve is, in my opinion, just the mini-me version of Christopher Nolan, with all the trimmings, the pretentious, soulless cinematography that amounts to nothing, the abject lack of anything resembling color, the telling his actors to act as dull and lifeless as he possibly can. I know Timothée Chalamet has a better personality than this. I saw Wonka. Like, this is... They must have told Timothée Chalamet to do what George Lucas told Hayden Christensen to do for Anakin, because like I hate this overly sterile, lifeless, colorless, stylistically void crap that we are obliged to call artistic and dramatic because it's boring. I hated it when Christopher Nolan did it. I hate it when Timothée Chalamet does it, and I hated it when Chloe Zhao did it to the Eternals of all things. We need to return to a cinematic landscape where style and color goddamn matter, and to be taken seriously, quote unquote, isn't just how most effectively can we bore the shit out of the audience. Now, I will say, Part 2 is an improvement over Part 1. Part 1 was the goddamn bane of my existence. In my opinion, the best Dune adaptation is still the Sci-Fi Channel miniseries from the early 2000s. And even then, I would argue that David Lynch's version is better than this, because it was at least trying to capture the bizarre metaphysical trippiness that is Dune, instead of removing all the bizarre, stylized metaphysical weirdness that is Dune. Wow. So yeah, no.
I disagree.
What you may think
of course
Dune,
it's going to be a brown movie, but okay. And I got to say, the David Lynch Dune made me
the most.
Go ahead.
Oh, he's back. Your and we lost him again.
Oh no, I'm here. Okay, so what's going on here, guys?
Is it just on my end, or is the chat also saying that we have E having technical issues?
I'm here.
You are now. You cut out like twice.
I don't know I have no freaking clue what's going on. Earlier, Gail unplugged the computer, so it's been acting wonky. She was like, "What's this?" And while I'm on the computer doing things, and she just unplugged it, and I was like, "Why would you do that?"
What? Why?
Yeah. I disagree with you. You know, I like these films. Granted, this one took me 3 days to watch, and not because I thought it was boring. It's just we had things to do. But yeah, Jay, exactly. But hey, you know, we're talking about the worst, and it's on your worst list. Let's get to my number 10. Alrighty. and it was a Netflix film taking place in France called Under Paris. Once again, I like a good shark film, so I watch shark movies. I had myself a couple of real shark encounters as a kid, so it's always been there on my mind. This one, the conceit, not the premise, the conceit is that there's these big rivers from the ocean that go under Paris, and they've been there for thousands and thousands of years, and there's these prehistoric sharks that some archaeologists accidentally opened, and I could be getting some of this wrong because this was at the beginning of the year, like at the beginning of summer, and they release these sharks, and of course normal stuff happens. Nobody's believing there's sharks in these waters. They even have a big race at the end where half of Paris jumps into the Seine River, and it's a feeding frenzy. It's ridiculous and amazingly stupid. It was just, it's my number 10. The CGI is bad. The characters, in order for this movie to move forward, the characters have to be doing dumb things. So it's one of those things as well. Also, you know what I'm thinking? I might undo this virtual background because sometimes that is what causes staticky and all that kind of stuff. Alrighty, so that was my number 10 was Under Paris. There you go, and there you go. What is your number 9?
Gladiator 2.
Ooh, my number 17, please.
I mean, Ridley Scott seems to be on a downward spiraling arc to ruin all of his best franchises, and this is no exception. What if we took exactly the same movie and removed everything that was good, iconic, or worthwhile about it, and tried to undermine every positive memory people had about the first one? That's this movie. It's the same thing he did with Alien Covenant. It's the same thing he's done with a bunch of movies of his that are iconic. He all but remakes them, and remakes them 1,000 times worse than the first one. And I'm not the kind of person who says, you know, there's no point for this sequel to exist, because if the movie was successful and people want to return to the world of the movie, that is why the movie exists, simply put. But this movie did on Gladiator what a lot of the special edition remakes or redos of Star Wars do for George Lucas for a lot of people, which is it showed just how much older Ridley Scott has become and how much less of a creative spark he actually has, because all of the actual context that makes Gladiator 1 a good story is either absent here or done badly, and a bunch of things that were added didn't actually add anything. They just added a bunch of drag to the movie that makes it 1,000 times worse. Ridley Scott, I love you, I do, but your time in the spotlight has waned, sir. So either focus on like niche art films or try to create new stuff, but stop undoing the good things about your previous IPs. It only hurts you, and it makes everyone else sad that a once great director is apparently trying to undermine his own best work.
Now,
So,
I don't know if I have a hot take, but I do know I have a correct take on this. Outside of Gladiator, I think Ridley Scott has been coasting on Alien and Blade Runner.
Yeah.
Honestly, I have more. Ridley Scott as a director, everybody tells me is great, but I think I have more in the minus column than I do the plus column for him. He might be a director we need to tier list. I would love to find out where this is. Tevye is saying his Napoleon movie was a train wreck. Wow, now Ridley's going to unsubscribe. Thanks, Dalton, says Jay. They tried to make a film where gladiators changed Rome. Just a story about a gladiator trying to survive would have worked. And Tevye, didn't mind this one, but thought, like I said, thought that Napoleon was his bad one. There you
I
go.
forgot that movie existed.
I did too. I missed that when
It
came
wasn't
out.
bad enough that I would put it on a list like this. Is the problem with Napoleon? There was a lot of competition for the bottom of the year list, folks.
Now, my number 9 is probably a film that none of you guys have seen because you were warned. Now, I'm a guy, I love going to see movies I haven't seen. And sometimes I like going to see movies that everybody else says is going to be horrible, just to see if I can find something good in it. And by the time this movie got out, and I saw it like the day of, or the day it was released, or the next day, like it was either Thursday or Friday. And it was, can I spell this right? Megalopolis. Alrighty, let me get this poster up so you have the little visual aid. This movie is a miss in every, like, it's one of those, not like, who was this movie for? We know who this movie was for. This movie was for Francis Ford Coppola. He's been trying to make this movie for
And
decades.
he didn't care if anyone else on the planet understood it at all.
Okay, so America is now Rome, to the point where at some point in time they are all wearing togas. And Shia LaBeouf, by the way, seems to be the only person who knows what movie he's in, because he chews on every piece of scenery. He gives a bad performance. Oh, no, he's not the only one, because Aubrey Plaza does too. They seem to give bad performances, but it fits perfectly in the movie. More so than a lot of people who are trying to be dramatic actors.
They chose to lean into the bad instead of trying to treat it like a serious art movie. TM.
Right. What was his name? Giancarlo Esposito. He is too serious for this movie. You know, he's a great actor, and in any other film that was being taken seriously,
the movie didn't deserve him, is what you're saying.
Nobody deserved this movie. Aubrey Plaza gets naked. But anyway, doesn't help you. But this movie, once again, it is a big movie. It's got big ideas. It's a big movie, but unfortunately, you can tell that this has taken decades to make. And I don't think it was the case of he wrote a script, say, in 1990, and he's been trying to get it made for the last 30 years. I think he wrote a script in 1990 and then updated in 98 and then 2005 and then 2008. And he did a little bit more, adding an addition for the last 30 years, to the point where it is so disjointed and it's everywhere. I will actually say, when it comes on streaming, check this movie out if you like a train wreck. And I don't mean like look at the bloody bodies train wreck. I mean like imagine the train from Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade wrecked. Would you not want to stand by the side of the road and watch that with all the rhinoceroses and the giraffes and everything? This is the most fun train wreck you're going to have in a long time. Absolutely fantastic. Craven did not make my top 10, Tevye. Just going to give you guys that heads up. All right, and we're going to do best
movies. It made mine, so we'll talk about it later.
Well, we'll get there. We'll get there. Right now, let's find out what Dalton's number 8 is.
Argyle,
which I just discovered had 2 E. Okay, there we go. All right, get to chatting, sir.
This movie should have been so easy to get right. Take Kingsman, add Murder, She Wrote, throw in Henry Cavill, and Bob's Your Uncle. We have a fun movie. Instead of doing that, the straightforward, fun version of this, we got a version where the Murder, She Wrote style author is the secret agent, and she has like memory issues, and she projects visions of Henry Cavill, which are the only times we see Henry Cavill in this movie, not as the actual secret agent, but as the fictionalized version of herself in this movie, because she has memory loss issues, but it's coming out in her fiction, and so on. So in short, the parts of the trailer that actually looked good, looked like, Murder, She Wrote meets Kingsman, like I was describing there. Those are fictional flashbacks that turn out to be much more grounded and quote-unquote realistic TM in real life, and we barely even get to see the real version of this anyway. So basically, this movie is a really good premise for a fun Kingsman-style thriller in which they did their best to bait and switch the audience on every level, and, of course, criminally underuse Henry Cavill, which is becoming such a universal trend that I think we should start making it a trope on TV tropes. Criminal waste of Henry Cavill. But yeah.
I started watching this movie. And
if you were sold on Henry Cavill, if you were sold on anything basically from the trailer, this movie hates you and wants to subvert you. That's the problem with this movie.
I started watching this movie and I was actually thinking, what the hell is people talking about? This is a lot of, it was really like that. Because it was like, okay, this is not bad. Why are everybody? And then it just kind of did one twist too many. And I was like, oh yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Because we have to be artsy and clever instead of giving the audience what anyone would hypothetically want ever.
Yeah, and then they tied it into the Kingsman, and it was like, yeah. Alrighty. Okay, so we are on number 8, right?
Yes.
Okay, what is England Teens 8? Alrighty, now look, I get why you guys don't like Kraven the Hunter. I saw it, but when I saw it, I thought this is just it really is just an average action film that they put Kraven in. The one that I thought was truly a bad movie and a bad superhero film was Madam Web. But I'm not alone, because it is in everybody's freaking top 10 worst.
Yeah, and this won't be the last time in this top 10 that you see it, because it'll come back later.
You know what, then? You know what? Just to save time, we know it's my number 8. Let's move on to your number 7, and I'll go off when we get to it on your list, okay? And we'll just go that direction, all right?
All righty.
Okay, so what is your number 7?
If I can remember what order I put stuff in, I think my number 7 was Borderlands, but it might have been The Crow.
Well, let's talk about Borderlands. And then I'm going to insist when we get to The Crow, you afford me the same favor. All righty?
Yeah. In any case, yeah, I don't really have much of a stake in the Borderlands video game franchise, but I do know a lot about it because several of my friends have a lot of investment in the Borderlands franchise. And my friend Nick, as soon as they announced this movie, called me up and needed me to console him because he knew how badly this was going to go. And surprising no one, it went about as badly as you thought it was going to go. The only reason why this isn't one of the worst video game movies ever made is because Uwe Boll exists and made his entire career on video game movies worse than this.
Yeah.
But that being said, if you know anything about Borderlands, you will hate this with a passion that burns with a 160,000 suns. If you don't know anything about Borderlands, it's still one of the worst movies ever made, and you will regret ever watching this thing. So, yeah, Borderlands is bad. Is very, very bad.
Alrighty. Now, Tubby is bringing up Watchmen. I totally disagree with this. I think the Watchmen cartoon is the best version of the Watchmen you're going to get, except for the live action director's cut that had in the black box. It truly is the comic book brought to life. So I do disagree with you. The only thing I would say bad about the Watchmen is that it's got voice actors instead of actors. All right, my number 7, and once again, when we get to the Crow on yours, you afford me the same for Madam Web, and we'll talk about it at the same time.
Yeah.
Let's see, my number 7. Let me put up England Teen 7. So I don't know why I started doing this, writing it out like we're not saying it, but it's something I started doing. Okay, Madam Web. Oh, yeah, my number 7 was Night Swim. This is like January 1st, so we're going back all the way to the beginning.
So it's a January horror movie, is what you're saying?
Yeah. What are we on? We're on 7, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So Night Swim, this family moves into a house that had a murder in it. Somebody disappeared mysteriously, and they jump in, and all of a sudden people start having problems and death occurs. Get the fuck out of the pool. Okay, we're done. Get the fuck out of the pool. Done. Hey, we're having problems with the pool. Have you noticed demons? Stay the fuck out of the pool. Okay, movie's over.
Get me out of the pool.
Yeah,
That is
in the
possessed by
80s.
demons or whatever.
In the 80s, there was a there was a movie called The Elevator, where this elevator was killing people. Don't go in the fucking elevator. This is the same thing. Stay the fuck out of the pool. Easy peasy, lemon squeezy.
This was entirely avoidable. You brought this on yourself.
Okay, but now they try to make it like the Amityville horror of swimming pools, basically, where the father finds relaxation in the pool and the demons that are in the pool, they take him over, and all of a sudden he's taking his evil inside the house. Get the fuck out of the pool. That is all you have to do. This movie was so damn horrible. It really was. I just get. That's it. I'm sorry. I'm not a freaking Roger Ebert.
It's a January horror movie. That's all you really need to know.
There were 3 horror movies that came out in January. Thankfully, we missed 2 of them. Tarot and Imaginary were the other ones that we missed. Man,
Imaginary actually had some promise. I will say that too. Imaginary actually had some promise.
Tevi and I completely disagree about movies. As a matter of fact, I would not mind when we're doing our live stream on Sunday afternoon that we actually do all 10, I believe there were 10 comic book movies this year. There was Venom, obviously Deadpool and Wolverine, Madam Web and Craven. What were the other ones? Oh, Hellboy had a movie this year.
Yeah, Crooked Man.
And
that's actually making it onto my best list.
One that not a lot of people know about is a Tom Hanks movie called Here. That's actually based on a comic book. That's a comic book movie. All righty, let's go to Dalton's number 6.
Which I believe is the... See, I made a list like a week ago, and I'm just struggling to remember which order I put stuff in.
Oh, if it's The Crow, I'm going to say, all righty, we're going to talk about that later. Same as we waited for you with Madam Web. I figure the worst it is on the list. What is your... my number... Well, okay, wait. That's 10, 9, 8, 7. My number 6 is a movie that was on Netflix also. I'm going to stop doing the writing it in there. It's a movie called It's What's Inside. Gail and I sit down and watch this, and to watch this, I made it maybe 30, 40 minutes in. It's What's Inside. You know, the one where the guy brings the box that switches bodies, and he's like, hey guys, you want to switch bodies? Your body might end up in Michelle's, and Michelle's might end up in Joe's. It'll be a fun time. And everybody's like, yeah. Like, hold on. You don't have one person here saying no. You don't have one. There's like no discussion on why this is a bad idea. There's no discussion on any of this. I think it stars the guy who does the Bear TV show. I don't know. But obviously things that happen. I mean, okay, let's say you and one of these 5 hot chicks are in the room, and okay, you switch the body, and this doesn't happen, by the way, and it should have. You switch bodies, all of a sudden you're in the hot chick. How fast are you going to be in the bathroom? Seriously.
Well,
okay.
not me, but
Well, point being is that this is such a darker film than they allowed this to be. Just the premise alone. Nobody goes crazy.
They tried to play it as comedic and upbeat when it should have been horrific.
It becomes a fucking CW movie. You know, and imagine somebody you would think would pop into a body and it would just drive them mad. Like you would not be able to handle it.
Right.
You know, there's so much more to this. And the fact that it was supposedly it was voluntarily done. This was a mess from the very premise. And the fact that they didn't really think about what this premise meant to have happen. Also, I will say, because I see in the disguise, like never heard of it. A lot of people who do top 10 lists want to make sure that you guys are tagging off on the big dogs. You know, it's much more fun to say that Deadpool and Wolverine was the worst film ever than it is that this small film you've never heard of. My thinking is, you knew you only had $200,000 to make a movie. You know what your limitations were. You should have made a good movie that was in that limitation.
Use what you have at your disposal. Don't complain about it.
In the 1990s, Kevin Smith did that with Clerks, and then he did the same thing for only $300,000 for Chasing Amy. Good movies can be made for on low budget, so I don't spare small films in my top 10s. All righty. What are we on? Number 6 or number 5?
5. We just did 6. My 6 would have been The Crow, but yeah, we kicked it down the road.
We'll get to that later. What is your number 5?
5 was Lord of the Rings, War of the Rohirrim.
Really? Guess what my number 5 is? Snores of the Snores, Lord of the Snoreville. All righty. Let's hear what you have to say about it.
Okay, so I am a person who gets very deep into Lord of the Rings lore. I've read the Silmarillion, and like I am the guy who's mad at Rings of Power because there is actually ways they could have told that story without fucking it up horribly, and they didn't. So imagine my Kel surprise when a character that I remind everyone was not even named in the story to which we are referring is now a 2020s feminist Mary Sue character, and the heroic king that is supposed to be Helm Hammerhand, he is at best a bumbling imbecile, at worst completely and utterly irrelevant to the plot, and also grouchy and miserable to boot.
Irrelevant to the plot. At one point in time, he's got like an hour and a half to get through these doors, and he's like, "No, I must die now." Clunk. You, the woman, is going to make sure that our kingdom is safe. Let me shut these doors. But Dad, they're a mile and a half away. No, I shall die for you now, so the redhead can lead you to victory as only she can. At one point in time, I think he actually says, my biggest mistake was not knowing how fucking awesome you were. I'm paraphrasing, but that line is spoken.
This is literally one of the most, like, you thought Rings of Power was bad with what they did to Galadriel, which it is. It's still bad, but you would have thought that this would have been a good excuse to show Rings of Power how it's done and how to adapt Tolkien correctly. But we don't get that. The only good thing that I can say about War of the Rohirrim is that the animation was good, but the animation could have been good, and we could have gotten a decent adaptation of the War of the Rohirrim that actually focuses on Helm Hammerhand. But apparently, we don't get that because a character who, again, wasn't even named in the appendices story to which we are referring, and by the way, while I'm being overly pedantic and annoying, all of Tolkien's names are supposed to be like Germanic and Anglo-Saxon in derivation, and yet they call the Mary Sue character Hera, and I'm just like, so
that's greasy.
Even though literally every other character who's ever named in Tolkien is derived loosely from like Germanic and Anglo-Saxon like derivation and shit, you're going to go with a Greek name of a Greek goddess that
so
they wouldn't have known about in the setting. Okay,
I like to, me and Gail, we have those AMC cards, so we go see 3 movies a week. Gail goes on Monday and Thursday with me, or Tuesday and Thursday, and I go by myself on a Wednesday afternoon. And this was my Wednesday afternoon movie, and I'm sitting there, and movie's going on, and about 6 hours into it, I check my watch, and only 30 minutes has gone by. You could, by the way, convince me I'm still watching that freaking slow ass movie. I don't know. This movie was what, like maybe 2 hours, maybe. It was such a slog.
Yeah.
And you mentioned Mary Sue. This is the Mary Sueest of all Mary Sues. You watch her brothers fall, and she, at one point in time, by the way, at one point in time, I shit you not, Crystal, I shit you not on this one, she is fighting the bad guy in a wedding dress because she is destroying every inch of the patriarchy. This movie is, okay, you know what? A lot of people say, define woke for me, because it seems like it's being used so much that everybody in the world has their own definition. I think from now on, the definition of woke should be the war of Rohirrim. Serious. This movie is exactly what nobody wants. It was so god-awful bad. And I don't follow the lore. I read The Hobbit. I tried to read The Lord of the Rings. It bored me. I watched the movies, love it. Love the films. As a matter of fact, I think I'm way overdue for a rewatch. But this one, it was bad from start to finish. The animation was okay, but you know what? I like the animation from the Bashki films that were made 40 freaking years ago.
The 70s Hobbit is still probably my favorite Tolkien adaptation.
It's a great one. I can't argue with that. Of course, I prefer the Peter Jacksons, but I was a kid when those movies came out, and they really impacted. But this movie just
it saw everything that Rings of Power did wrong and went, hold my beer. Literally.
Yeah. But it's something when you could say, give me the CGI of 20 years ago, or give me the actual animation of 40 years ago. This doesn't make it. More so, give me the writing of either one of those times.
Yeah,
because
please.
It would have respected, even if they wanted to highlight a character that truly didn't exist, except for in name only in the writings, from what I understand. Even if they wanted to highlight and see what her reaction would have been, at least then it would have been written a little bit more respectfully.
Well, they could have given her some 3-dimensionality, and they could have made her a good the Peter Jackson movies did that a lot with minor characters that didn't really get much play in the books. But the difference is Peter Jackson back in the day tried to do it from within Tolkien's reasoning and rationale for the lore and rationale for the world building. This movie literally went, hey, what if we disguise a feminist propaganda movie as a Lord of the Rings movie and trick all the Lord of the Rings fans into watching it? Derp.
Yeah. All right, we could definitely go on and rant on these things. On this one, obviously, both of us saw it. Both of us have similar thoughts to it. God awfully boring too.
It's bad.
I think part of the problem is it'd be like, here comes an army of orcs. We need to go fight them. Why? Send her out. And she walks out. She kills all 1,000 orcs, and
the only adult that's allowed to be competent is the old
woman.
crone shield maiden as well. So there's that too.
Woman good. That's what Lord of the Rings, man bad, woman good. That's what this should be called. I mean, and what gets me is you say this, and then of course the idiots would be like, oh, well, you just hate women, completely ignoring the fact that they had, what's her name, Liv Tyler and the blonde chick. I am no man, stab you facing,
and that worked because it made sense in the lore and the character.
In the disguise, saying there was a lot of member berries at the that were from the film. You remember this, you remember that.
Okay, and again, being
agreeing that the Bashki movies were good.
and being a pedantic asshole here, half of the stuff that they member bury in, like with Saruman and so on, doesn't even make sense for the timeline. This is not that point in the Third Age at all. Like, what the hell? Also, they tried to make Saruman acting as Saruman like should in a scene as foreshadowing to him like turning evil, and I'm like, if you're gonna do the evil foreshadowing music, you could have like had him get to Orthanc and discover the Palantir and then do your little sinister foreshadowing music, because the
spoiler alert,
Palantir
he
corrupted him
shows
and
up
stuff.
at the end. Yeah. Okay. Let's see. That was our number 5. What is your number 4, sir?
Craven.
All right. We'll talk about Craven. Let me put that up and let's go. Why is Craven on your list?
I mean, the Sony like live action Spider-Verse sans MCU involvement has always been a throwback to the worst aspects of the early 2000s, the early 2000 era of superhero movies, where they have to undo as much comic booky stuff as they possibly can and turn it into a generic sci-fi action movie. The only one that kind of works is the Venom trilogy, and that's because occasionally they veer into the fun aspect of the early 2000s or late 90s comic book movie. But whether it be Craven, whether it be Madam Web, whether it be Morbius, it's a throwback to parts of an era when the comic book movie wasn't respected. And I think this goes back to Sony being idiots, because much like the Fox movies prior to Deadpool and prior to Logan, they seem to think that you can't make a comic book movie that people will actually want to see, so they have to undo as much of the comic book lore, as much of the comic book aesthetic as they possibly can. And they do the same, and they do the same thing here. Which, by the way, Craven is not even a hunter in Craven. He is essentially kind of an assassin or a bail bonds person. Like
well, that's their thing. They call him, I am the hunter of bad men. I mean, you are a bad man. Why are you trying to make him a hero? But that was the whole thing. Yeah, he hunted bad people in this one.
That being said,
I watched Jeremy Johns' review, and he goes, "Why didn't you just have him hunt Venom? You know what? You can't have him hunt Spider-Man. Have him hunt Venom. It would have made sense."
And it could have actually built some kind of world building into this universe, although not that anyone is particularly asking for that, because again, the Sony Spider-Verse sans MCU involvement wants to revive the worst aspects of the early 2000s, late 90s era of comic book movies where they can't be comic booky.
I gotta admit, this did not make my bottom 10. I don't actually know where I put it, but I think it was in maybe even the C's, or as far as where I put this. It did make my bottom 10 because I remembered how much I liked Swamp Thing, and it kind of reminded me of Swamp Thing. It's not a particularly great film, but at the very least, it was an entertaining and enjoyable film. And with Craven, that's kind of how I felt. I felt, yeah, this is just like a B-movie action film. Yeah, I have this in the C's. So it's kind of in the middle. I can't recommend it, but there was enough there for me to enjoy as a bad movie. You know, I often, if you ask me, did you like this?
So for you,
like
it was enjoyably bad, is what you're saying?
Yeah, well, that's the thing. I was about to say, sometimes I'm asked, did you like this? Did you not? And I'll say it was entertaining. And that kind of thing is like, when I say it's entertaining, it's doesn't mean it was good. It means that like I had fun with it, or I was able to grab onto something. With Craven the Hunter, the dialogue is horrible in such a way that you're like, somebody got paid a lot to have them say these words. This is a movie where Kraven the Hunter wrestles a tiger in a white shirt on a dirt road, stands up, and he is perfectly clean. This is a movie where it's like, I do believe there was a dialogue like, well, I would never hunt like this because it's dishonorable. And then 5 seconds later, he's hunting exactly like that.
Yeah, he does the thing he said he wouldn't do 5 seconds ago. Yes.
It was almost like one of the DC Challenge. I don't know if you ever heard of this. The DC Challenge was where one issue is written by one writer, and then the next issue is written by another one, and then another one. So they only have what
writer round robin.
Yeah, that's how this script felt. It felt like, well, I wrote a page, here you go. I wrote a page, here you go. You know, and they just kind of pass it around. And that kind of bad is entertaining to me, if that makes any sense to you guys. But yeah, that was not. It wasn't good, but it wasn't bad enough to be in my top 10.
I think Aaron Taylor Johnson was trying, and that's why this isn't as high on the bad list as Madam Web, which we will get to in literally a second here. But I do think someone was trying with Kraven in a way that they weren't trying with Morbius or Madam Web, and that's why it's probably the best of the non-Venom, like, Sony 90s throwback movies.
Tevye,
but it's still bad for all the reasons that the Sony 90s throwback movies are.
Kraven the Hunter was just dumb and made no sense. That is excellent. That is a really good way of putting it. 4 for me is Venom Last Dance. We do not agree, Tevye. Honestly, over making villains sympathetic, says Dark Admiral. To quote Michael Caine, he says, some men just want to see the world burn. They wasted the Rhino again. I disagree, actually. I kind of like
and here's the other thing. You can make a villain sympathetic or relatable or interesting or philosophically intriguing without making them not a villain. Like,
no.
Look at the way Agatha all along handled Agatha. She is 100% a villain in that series, and everyone knows it. But she also still has a 3-dimensional personality and motives and lines she won't cross. And
by
that's
the end,
why.
I do agree with Stug. He's got kind of like Kevin Costner's English accent, where he is talking in the Russian accent, and then he like loses it halfway through.
Honestly, a better movie like this could have been made if Russell Crowe was playing Kraven, but playing him similar to the way he is in the comics. I think that could have worked better.
Been done 30 years ago, though. Tevye is asking, what's the point of the chameleon? Even in the comics, they're brothers. I actually like the fact that we got to see a live-action chameleon. At the end, of course, you get to see the blank face, and I kind of like that. Before you do number 1, recap the list. We'll do In a Disguise. Heck, look at the Penguin. He's a bad person, and that show hit the nail. Oh yeah, the Penguin is maybe the best comic book related thing that was released this year. I would have to look at everything, but I think Penguin. You know what? I'm going to solidly say that.
I still have yet to see it, so I have no opinion.
And here is why I say that. My wife liked the Penguin. That is not nothing. Lately, the only time I see him do the opposite was Mr. Freeze in the comics, which was awful, says Dark Admiral. All right, let's go on. That was your number 4. What is my number 4? Oh, shit. It is amazing to me that there are 3 other movies worse than this one. But Lisa Frankenstein came out this year. Cole Sprouse was from Riverdale, was the Frankenstein's monster. Okay, pretend Lisa Frankenstein is made by a transitioning Tim Burton. There you go. That is
okay. That's a really interesting and yet accurate metaphor for this.
Have you seen this movie?
I have.
This movie is god awful.
It was too forgettable to be bad, in my opinion.
So for you, this is your Kraven the Hunter. It was, yeah, that's the best way I could put it. This movie seems like it was made by a transitioning Tim Burton. She falls in love with Frankenstein monster. And murder ensues. They try to make it. It really, really seems like they're trying to remake Heathers in a certain way. If you guys know, this is where
that's not a bad pull. Honestly, it does kind of feel that way.
This girl meets a guy who seems crazy, and they start killing people. And that is exactly what happens here. A girl meets a guy, turns out to be a Frankenstein monster, and they start killing people. It is exactly that, but done so poorly. And the pacing on this movie is so incredibly off. The writing is bad. This is Diablo Cody's been writing on Juno fumes for the last 20 years.
Yeah.
And the direction is just so slow. Absolutely god-awful film here.
Yeah, and just because I didn't put it on my list doesn't mean it's not bad. It's just there was a lot of competition for the worst of the year this year. So.
I think about this film, and I'm amazed that I've got 3 movies worth of one of them you guys have no idea exists. So I will be happy to bring it to your attention just in case you're like, I want to watch a Western, maybe, and I'll be like, no, and that's the point of this. All right, let's go on to your number 3.
Madam Web.
All righty. Oh, I could have waited for that for you. But oh wait, no, we didn't talk about this one.
Yeah, that's where you instituted the waiting rule.
This was my number 8. Yeah, and we'll do Crow when it comes to mine. Okay, so you're going ahead. You speak first. It's your number 3. It's my number 8.
I mean, okay. Obviously, the standard sort of black pill response is, why was this movie even made? Blah blah, which I hate because
I hate that stupid thing.
You can make a good movie out of anything. The question is whether you do. And here's my thing. I, like most people who grew up watching Spider-Man the Animated Series, remember and have fondness for Madam Web. But it's not this Madam Web. It's not the comic book Madam Web. It's the nigh omnipotent version of Madam Web, who is an understudy to the Beyonder and was acting as Peter's pseudo fairy godmother for like a season of Spider-Man the Animated Series. Why in God's name did they not make that movie? Why did they not make a otherworldly cosmic version of Madam Web that actually has potential to have been good? But this is the thing, and I open with that gambit specifically because the only people who remember or have any fondness for Madam Web don't have fondness for the street level comic version of the character. They have fondness for the understudy of the Beyonder, who was the angel on Peter's shoulder for a season of the animated series. So why didn't you make that movie? But even if, for some reason, you decided that the comic book street level version of Madam Web was the version you had to make, which nobody wants or even remembers, they Morbius'd it. Is the best way to put it. They did exactly what I criticized Sony for doing when we were talking about Kraven. They act as though the comic book genre has not matured or grown or gained any legitimacy or steam in the last 30 or 40 years, because it still feels like this movie should have and could have been made in 1998 around the same time as they made Spawn. And Spawn was better than this movie. It's not even this would have been considered good back in the day. No, Spawn, which came out contemporaneous to when this film like both is set and feels tonally like it's from. No, Spawn was better than this movie, but all 3 of the Blades were better than this movie, and so on and so on, and I could go on. Sony and Fox less so because they finally got the message with Deadpool and Logan, but Fox and Sony need to get it through their heads that when you adapt a comic book, people want it to be comic booky. They don't want all the fun or interesting or high concept shit taken out and it turned into a generic sci-fi action movie. And if you do that, again, Sony, then hopefully you'll go so bankrupt that Marvel can just buy you outright, because I'm sick of this acting like the last 30 years worth of comic book movie genre has not bettered the position the genre's in. You are not better than comic book source material when you are adapting comic book source material. Either adapt it correctly or shut the fuck up, please.
Okay, so my take on this one. one of the things that just kind of hits my mind. I understand Craven. If you're looking at Spider-Man's world, you cannot use Spider-Man. So you want to use other characters that are attached to him. I get why you would make a Craven film. It makes sense to do Venom. They were going to do Silver Sable, and they went with Madam Web. Silver Sable makes more sense than Madam Web to me. So they're never going to make Silver Sable because they've just had a year of flop. And okay, so I absolutely believe that they said, wait. No, we can't do Silver Sable. She's kind of a villain also. We need to do a hero. We need to build a hero. And so they said, well, who do we have? Oh, Madam Web. I mean, that's a great name. And it really is. That's a great name for a movie, Madam Web. And so they went, okay, so what does she do? She sees the future. Well, how can we make this a movie? And I don't think they really had an answer for that. And
no,
that's part of the problem. That's part of the problem because you have to make her the hero. So she's protecting more interesting characters. You know, with Sydney Sweeney being the other Spider-Woman, and she's protecting better characters than Madam Web. Madam Web is an awesome side character who pops up and does the whole Mobius, this is going to happen to you thing with riddles and all that the hero has to figure out. Not a big main character. And it just got lost. The plot, the story, there's no point to this movie. It's just like I said about the Miller's Girl. After a while, you're going, why is this movie made? Not who is this for, because it's for comic book geeks. It's just we didn't like it. You know, we know who it's for, but why was this movie made when they didn't have any ideas for this movie? They didn't have any ideas for the character.
So that they wouldn't lose the Spider-Man IP. I think that's the logic behind all of these.
They wouldn't because they've got Venom, and that's their cash cow. It's because
they want to pad out a universe so that they can compete
Silver
with
Sable, easy mix, spy thrills, witty banter, cool gadgets, and a dash of Deadpool sass. Throw in a couple of villains. You've got the Sony Suicide Squad. Boom, done. You can actually use Spider-Man villains as her sidekicks and such. But Silver Sable made sense. Madam Web made no sense. This movie is rice cakes. This movie is the yellow line right down the middle of the street. And you can say, oh, that's a dangerous place to walk. Horseshit. It is not picking a side. It is just boring to the point where
you could have made a Madam Web movie that was the Madam Web that people care about and remember. The one with trippy otherworldly cosmic powers.
Yeah.
Making a movie based on Madam Web, the cosmic entity from the Spider-Man animated series, that works. This does not work because there is literally nothing that she can do. No aspect of her character. There is no line, no scene, no nothing that gives this movie any substance whatsoever, except for the fact that it is a horrendously bad throwback to the worst aspects of the 90s superhero movie culture.
All right. In a disguise. Well, the thing, she did not see the future because all her visions of the future cannot happen because they killed him. Of course, it's do you see the future or a possible future? And here, okay, so the guy has a dream. These girls are going to kill me. So I've got to go put myself in front of them. No. Stay the
self-fulfilling prophecy.
Stay away.
Old as King
yeah. It's like, oh my God. The best way for him to do it was for the rest of his life, if it was like, oh, you have an appointment with Sydney Sweeney and Dakota Johnson. Yeah, no, I'm not taking that. Have Jim take that. I'm going to be over here having a margarita.
Or better yet, track them down like he did anyway, and then like bribe them all and make sure that they can live the high life so that they like him and have no reason to kill him.
Yeah, that could do also. But point being is that it was a self-fulfilling prophecy. It was just like, this is the dumbest plot you guys could have thought of. And the and the ADR, which has been talked about forever, where it's like, well, I just got to give you all these plot details, but we got to make it look like, okay, it was part of the movie all along, and then let's go get them. You know, it's ridiculous. Sony has PS5, I think, it to build the universe and expand. To the media, Tevi saying this movie made no sense whatsoever. Also, main villain sucks. Yes, it did. Like, oh yeah, the Silver Sable would have been like James Bond with better hair.
Speaking of this would have been better if it had Venom in it. I think if Venom was the villain here, that also could have maybe worked.
Yep. Alrighty, so my number 3, once again, I told you guys, it's a movie you guys have no idea exists. I'm sorry. Okay? You were happy. You were happy. But I like Mario Van Peebles. Okay? I have since I saw him in Heartbreak Ridge. It was so when I saw that he had a Western, I was like, holy shit, Sweet Badass's badass song son is out playing cowboys and Indians. Let's check this shit out. I'm in. I am in on this. It's called Outlaw Posse. And it is, you remember what I said about War of the Rohirrims?
Rohirrim, yes.
If you want to say so. This is an actual woke Western. Outlaw Posse. There is a scene in here where he's on a carriage. I don't remember much about this movie. This is also a January film. This movie comes out. I'm like I said, woo! Mario, because he makes B movies. He makes B movies, D movies. There is a scene where he's in a wagon. Just riding along. And then there you go. Whoopi Goldberg's right next to him. Y'all, let's go. Let's have a discussion. What are we going to discuss? Well, what we're going to discuss here, Mario, is the patriarchy and how white privilege is ruining it. I am not fucking kidding. They use that language. They don't they don't Western it up. They don't put it into 1895 language. They are straight out talking 2024 language in a Western that's supposed to take place 200 years ago.
When a gender studies major has a cinematography minor, basically, is what you're telling me.
It was god awful. I'm telling you, I don't remember much about this movie except for that scene because it has stuck with me as one of the dumbest things I've ever seen. And they were literally talking about white. Well, no, okay, I guess, you know, that time, yeah, white people did have a bit more privilege over black people. Let's not get anything wrong over here. But the point being is they were using modern day language. There's a movie. It's based on a real event. My grandfather was one of the men trying to keep it from spreading to other towns. It was called Rosewood. It took place in Florida, where basically some girl lied about being raped by a black guy, and they just went nuts.
Oh, this, yeah.
It got so bad that men from other towns were making sure that it stayed in that area while they were trying to get, I forget who it was, whether it was the army or whatever in there. But anyway, in that movie, there are 2 black people and they're talking about white people. And they're talking about how, oh, it seems so much easier to be a white person. And it is a much better written speech, and it is of the time. This is just a god-awful film. I mean, this is a truly bad movie. And it actually might be worse than my number 1, and I'll tell you why. My number 1 film, this is number 3 or number 2?
Number 3. Okay.
But the point being is my number 2, my number 1, those were bad, but I think they were bad by accident. You know, this, I think, was exactly what they wanted. And so it is a truly bad film because what they wanted to make was a bad film, if that makes any sense.
No, yeah, it was ruined from conception, is basically what you're saying.
Yeah, I mean, it's one thing for somebody to put their all into it, and it just doesn't work out. It's in the same category
as Velma or She-Hulk or Daniel Kibblesmith's New Warriors, that kind of territory.
Let me get some comments here. Let's see. Never heard of this. I knew you guys would not have heard of this one. Taking one for the team, watching bad movies and saving us. Thanks, E. You're welcome. By the way, there is a new Sylvester Stallone film out right now. Not a lot of people know about. And I want to watch that one too. So we're starting 2025 so far. I got to do a review of it. I got to catch up and actually be Johnny on the spot with these reviews. But I just saw Wolfman, and I want to talk about that. Okay, let's see. Wow, that's dumb. Yes, it was. Sounds like a train wreck. No, sir. No, sir. Train wrecks can be interesting and fun. This was not. This movie sounds, it was pure trash. Sad part, in about half the real cowboys were actually freed slaves or Mexicans. A real missed opportunity to tell their real stories. Yep.
Well, and people always overemphasize the racial component, because try being an Irishman in the same period as this, and then talk to me.
All righty. Oh, did you do your number 3, or did I just?
No. I did my number 3. My number 3 was Madam Web. It's time for my
there you
number
go.
2.
All right, your number 2 is
the American Society of Magical N-Words. We can't say because we will get eaten off of YouTube.
Go on ahead.
I'm not saying it. But okay. So let me paint y'all a picture.
Title, I wouldn't go about saying it normal, but
yeah. Let me paint y'all a picture. About a year ago, me and Eglantine and VENKMAN were sitting on a live stream, and we were going over the movies that were about to come out in 2024, and we came upon the American Society of Magical N-Words, and all three of us were just staring at the screen in incredulity as to this movie even existing. But here's the really sad thing about American Society of Magical Negroes. You hear that title, and you think you're in for something akin to what Eglantine was just talking about, or a Daniel Kibblesmith's New Warriors. Like, we've all been around this block a time or two, and we know that there are truly awful exhibits of social justice or wokeness in the offing on occasion. But the really sad thing about this movie, you would think that it's going to go, full spite and be like a She-Hulk, or be like the Acolyte, or be like Daniel Kibblesmith's New Warriors. But no, this movie is bad primarily because even with an inflammatory title like that, where you know that you're in for some social justice nonsense, even the social justice set were mad at this movie because it didn't actually go far enough. Because instead of at least having the courage of its convictions and giving us something as spiteful as a Velma or a New Warriors, they had that inflammatory title and had the inflammatory politics to go with it, but they tried to soft pedal it and turn it into a generic romantic fantasy movie. And I'm sorry, but on some level that's actually kind of worse. Because at the very least, had they gone full Velma or full New Warriors or full She-Hulk, those of us on the anti-social justice side would have gotten a kick out of ripping it to shreds. Would have at least been able to go, oh, this is yet another example of when you make ideological spite the point of your movie and it winds up being bad. But they didn't even do that. This is actually one of the areas I agree with the social justice-oriented critics, because if you're going to have a title like that, you have two options. Either make it an over-the-top fantasy movie, something like Sci-Fi Channel's The Magicians, but from a racial perspective, which could have worked and could have actually been a decent, sincere version of this movie, or you have the other option, which is go full hog and just be as spiteful and vindictive and BLM-oriented as you want to be. It didn't manage to do either of those things. It tried to get controversy points and shock points with that title and with the marketing and with every other freaking thing. But then when it came time to deliver the actual movie, it had no teeth. It was just dull. So even the social justice set don't like it because they don't think it went far enough. And it's sad when the anti-social justice set and the social justice set both agree that if the movie was going to bother with that shit, it should have at least gone full hog with it, and it didn't bother.
Now,
It's just pathetic, honestly.
I did not see this movie. By the time it was in the theater, by the way, when I was moving from Florida to Indiana. By the time we got to the movie theater, it was gone. I wanted to see it because I felt this would have been an incredibly fun, bad film. But I was hoping the same thing a lot of Black people were hoping, that this was Black Harry Potter, you know, that in some way magic exists for Black people the same way it does for white people in Harry Potter. It could have been our American version. Yeah, and I know they've got the Beast movies, but it could have been the American version of this. And there were a lot of Black people who got pissed at this movie because it's a movie about the struggle. There's in a lot of these leftist, call them woke if you want, movie makers just think that there's only one story to tell with Black people. So when I discovered what it was on Peacock for a bit. I never made the leap, you know. I would put it on, but I never hit start, you know. It's like I'm not going to watch this film.
And even if you wanted something that's, you know, magical BLM, basically, like maybe Black people using magic to take over the country or whatever, so something that would have been that kind of radical leftist movie, even they didn't get what they want because the movie didn't even bother to have the courage of its convictions. It wanted to say all this crap, you know, the standard BLM talking points, but it didn't actually commit to the bit. And whatever else you may say about The Acolyte or Velma or Daniel Kibblesmith's New Warriors or She-Hulk or any of those, at least their spite is an actual motivation to commit to the bit, as DNC would say, or your boy Zach would say. This movie doesn't even commit to the bit. It wants the controversy points of being called what it's called and being marketed the way it was marketed, but there's no actual teeth to that controversy. So they did everything they could to be as spiteful as they could, and then they didn't even deliver on the radical spite that the critics would have liked. So this movie is literally for no one. It's not for anyone who wanted a decent, like, fantasy comedy. It's not for anyone who wanted the, you know, social justice style spite. It's not for anyone who wanted a movie to dump on, like, you know, Us or Critical Drinker or Mahler. And it's not for any of the actual ideologues who would have wanted to see a spiteful movie like this. This movie is so nothing that it honestly winds up being more pathetic than if it did go full hog and commit to the bit.
Alrighty. Let's see. It's my turn for 2, huh?
Yep.
Okay. What is my number 2? Oh, another movie you guys probably didn't know existed, but one of my guilty pleasure films, and mainly because it had Christina Applegate in it a long time ago, that I liked was a movie called Don't Tell Mom the Babysitter's Dead, and they remade it this year.
Oh God.
Yeah. Well, they did race swap the family. It's a Black family with oh my gosh, she was in a good movie this year called Thelma. I forget the actress's name, but she's an old lady, and of course she dies, and the kids of course hide that fact, and they try to live out some life without their family, without their mama there. And the original was a movie that I think gets a lot more respect now than it did back in the day. In this case, it was how can I say this? You liked the kids. You know, the kids were trouble, but they made sure you liked them. And maybe I just became a curmudgeon. You know, maybe I'm just a little bit more grumpy, and I'm like, yeah, you need your ass whipped. But I didn't find any of the jokes funny. I just didn't find the kids charming. You know, the mom was fine, but once she's out of the picture, and she has to be out of the picture for the movie to happen, it's like, okay, who are we following? Who are we sympathizing here with? And I think that's what they, that's what they missed from it. There's no charm to the movie, you know. Even okay, here's also something that they changed in the movie. There's a kid with a shotgun and he's throwing, he throws a dish. Blam, dishes are done, man. This time they're putting him on T-ball stands and hitting him. Dishes are done, man. And he says it so serious, like, dishes are done, man, instead of the dishes are done, man. You know, like the original
was having fun with it, was doing a bit.
This is the iconic line, and he knows he's not doing dishes right, and he, you know, the other guy was angry, you know, and that's actually a lot of this. A lot of the kids, they come off just as, like, not like they're having fun. It's like they're doing it because the movie told them they have to do it. In the original, it just seemed like, okay, mom's gone, let's party, man. And then, of course, they realize in order to keep the family together, they actually have to come together and work and do stuff. And it seemed like the original cast had a lot more fun than this one. And if the cast isn't having fun, you're not having fun. I say, skip this version, go find the remake, or go find the original with Christina Applegate. It's a lot of fun. We'll talk about Thelma, the movie the babysitter in this one is in. We'll talk about that on Sunday. All righty. But there you go. That's my number 2. Let's see. Harry Potter movies were made before the trope of blackwashing white characters in movies to say blacks were part of English history. But there were, as it was pointed out by Austin, there were black wizards in Harry Potter. The only reason why there weren't more, it's in England. Yeah.
Yeah. Kingsley Shacklebolt, who eventually becomes minister at the end of movie 7, was a black wizard there.
Acolyte was just dumb and a waste of time. I don't know if we're going to do TV shows, but I didn't watch The Acolyte. I saw that coming from a mile away. I guess I could have jumped on the bad review bandwagon and gotten. I'm going to do that this year. If there's any obvious bad shit, I'm going to watch that and review it, get the views. Let's see. Love the original version of, I'm assuming, of this movie, says Dark Admiral there. Wow, this sounds like a bad idea. The dishes are done, man. Yeah, exactly. When did the original was like 1988, 89, around there, you know? They remade this. Wow, hard pass, says Stug. I love the original. It was silly fun. Did she die because of drive-by shooting? Just wondering. Thankfully, it was a heart attack. They didn't go that deep into the culture there, but yeah, it was a drive-by fruiting. So they are unlikable. Exactly. Why they even remade this movie? It says Chevia found a lot of jokes they make so they don't offend anyone, which miss cases makes them out. Yeah, a lot. You gotta. In a comedy, I think you're right. You have to take a chance on.
You got to risk something to get any sort of reward out of it.
Oh no, hate watching is not good for the soul. Just saying. Crystal, been doing this for 8 years. I've been hate reading comics for a long time now. All righty, your number 2.
Number 1.
Oh, we're already on number 1.
Yeah.
Okay. Your number 1 is different than my number 1, and since my number 1 is your number something or other, let's hear your worst film of 2024.
Joker 2. And there's a couple of very good reasons why it's here. One, as bad as numbers 4 through 2 on my list were, no one had any hopes for them. Like, everyone knew that Craven and Madam Web were going to wind up doing exactly what Morbius did, and they did, and we all saw it coming. Nobody had any hopes for American Society for Magical N-Words. This movie, however, the first one was my number 1 movie on the best list for 2019. And the trailers were all really, really, really good. But the problem is, this movie goes out of its way to try and undo everything people liked about the first one. Everything. And no, it's not because it's a musical and people don't like musicals. Bull freaking shit. I was on board with a musical from the first time I saw the first trailer. But I was also sold, in no small part, on that first trailer, wherein they play up the love story and they play up Joker and Harley being kind of partners in crime, basically doing like a Bonnie and Clyde or a Thelma and Louise with a little bit of One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest thrown in and a little bit of like Chicago thrown in. If that had been the movie, I would be singing a vastly, vastly different tune. But that is not the movie. That is the movie we were sold in both of the trailers, but that is not the movie we got. It would have been so easy to do Mad Love by way of Bonnie and Clyde or Thelma and Louise, and how you could have even had the equivalent of the Thelma and Louise Canyon be the vat of acid that, you know, is the missing part of the origin story for this Joker and this Harley. That could have been cool. But instead, we default back as much as possible to Arthur is pathetic, Arthur is a loser, and we as the audience should all think of him as pathetic. We shouldn't like him as the embodiment of like repressed anarchy that he was in the first one, and we shouldn't have sympathy for his mental illnesses and things, even though that was a large part of the sort of ethos of the first movie. This movie does everything it can to undo everything that people liked about the first one and everything that relates this character to the Joker in any way. And I think what happened was Todd Phillips wanted to please the critics who hated the first one, and so he basically made a movie in which the critics of the first one were right to think of Arthur as a pathetic incel, instead of leaning into the sort of instead of leaning into the what do you get when you cross a mentally ill loner with a society that treats them like the things that people liked or related to in the first one that made this version of the Joker a very good version of the Joker, and made the idea of crossing King of Comedy with the backstory elements from The Killing Joke such a good idea in the first one. Instead of doing the obvious, what if Joker and Harley actually were in love? Because this version, Arthur is not an abusive version of the Joker. So instead of him twisting her, like in most versions of Mad Love, this could have very easily been a Bonnie and Clyde or a Thelma and Louise with the vat of acid in place of the canyon. But instead, Arthur is really as pathetic as the hateful critics of the first one thought he was. Harley really is just using him. The music is fine, but they could have chosen better. If they wanted to do a jukebox musical, they could have chosen better tie-ins with the plot, as it were. And by the way, if you liked the ambiguity of the first one, where we didn't see where Arthur's delusions ended and where the canon events, quote unquote, began, there is a extended, and by extended I mean like half of the film is just a courtroom drama where they unmask everything people liked about the first one and also undo a lot of what people liked about the first one. What would have made sense is this is the next step in Arthur Fleck's journey to Jokerdom and Harley's journey to hench girl status. But we didn't get that. We got the critics were right all along, and if you liked the first one, I, as Todd Phillips, hate you. Okay,
so on Sunday, before we were going to recap. We'll recap before we talk about mine, because I forgot. Sorry. We are going to do the best of on Sunday. Probably, are you available like 2:00 in the afternoon around there?
Yeah, I'll just end up going to bed like 3 hours earlier so I can actually wake up on time.
Okay. Yeah, we'll do it around then. And I will talk about the Joker Part 2 then. Alrighty, so that being said, because it is amazing to me I only know of a handful of people who like this film, and the people who like this film love this film. And I know because when I got out of this film, when me and Gail got out of this, I was floored. I was like, wow, that was really good. And I walked out, and there's I make friends with pretty much anybody as we go around town. Gail thinks it's funny because I was like, I don't know anybody in there. She goes, 5 minutes, you're gonna have friends up and down the block, and everybody's gonna know you.
Yeah, you still do the Disney showman thing still.
And the people at the movie theater, I got them to like me by, I don't call anybody by their name. Millie is Miley. You know, I walked up, and the first person I met, she's got a tag that says Brittany. I went, "You don't look like a Brittany." And she goes, "I know." So ever since, I've called her not Brittany, you know. It's just that kind of thing. So I walk out, and this guy named Lucian, he says, what'd you think of that? And I just sing the praises. And he goes, "I thought it sucked." And I went, you know, I told him all my reasons why I thought it was a really good movie. And this will, I am going to be one of the only people you're going to see defending Joker 2.
Yeah, you can be on that island mostly by yourself.
Oh, I absolutely know I am on this island by myself. But the thing is I don't disagree with a lot of the a lot of what you said, but they just affected you more negatively than they did me. You know?
Well, I think because I also was really, really invested in the first one, and I thought it was freaking brilliant.
I agree with you. I love the first movie, and I think it's a great character study. I thought this one was a great character study also. It's almost a character, but you know what? I'm going to talk about that later. Let's get some, before we recap, let's get some of these because they are absolutely responding to you. Number one for Tevye is also Joker because that movie really sucked. Let's see. Did anyone see Tim Dillon on Tim gave a very honest take. I did not. I don't even know. Austin didn't even know Craven was already out. Black Spider says that Joker was the worst movie ever. To which I respond, Black Spider, get your ass out to the movie theaters more often.
Yeah, there are worse movies. I will say this is one of the most disappointing original to sequel transitions I've ever seen.
I would love for that also. When we're talking about movies, I want to do a separate for comic books, as well as I would like to know the most disappointing and most surprising films. The absolute worst film I've ever seen was a movie called Gore Horror. It was a $10 apartment film. If you know those, somebody made it for $10 in their own apartment. Let's see. I know Joker 2 was bad in my opinion, says Tevye. Barbie was a musical. Okay. Well, it did have music in it. Joker 2 was good until the courtroom crap. And then they actually made this movie bad purposely, as the director did not want to do a sequel. They wanted to destroy the character from 1 because he became a hero to people they did not like that. It was a fuck you film.
Well, and that to me is what clenches Joker 2's number one set. That and
I get that.
I have a saying, which is you have to try in order to fail. And I kind of explained it earlier with Morbius and with Madam Web and with Craven and with American Society for Magical N-Words. Everyone and their dog could see the writing on the wall. That those movies are not as bad as Joker 2 on the grounds that they weren't really trying to be. They weren't really trying to be anything. They just existed for the sake of existing. With Joker 2, though, I know how much potential was squandered because the first one exists. And had they actually made a movie that was more in line with the trailers and made it kind of a Arthur finds his partner in crime version of Mad Love, you know, kind of Thelma and Louise crossed with One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest set to music, that movie would have been good because the trailer was good, and that's exactly how they sold the movie. And that's the other thing I dislike about this movie. It sold itself as we're going to give Arthur his partner in crime. We're going to show mad love, but from a sincere Bonnie and Clyde or Thelma and Louise perspective, and we're going to do it as a romantic musical, or at least a fun musical where they go and burn down the town because, you know, anarchy for anarchy's sake. But instead, no. Arthur really was as pathetic as the negative critics of the first one thought he was, and instead, no, you're not supposed to want him to slowly become the Joker that we know. You're supposed to you're supposed to completely separate that from the character, even though. Sorry, but
so
yeah.
Leon is saying I'm a fan of of Lady Gaga as an actor, and I agree. American Horror Story Hotel, she was really good at. I do agree with that. Clint,
I like Gaga, and I like.
Clint, why do you have to be mean to me? Seriously.
What?
Why are you even comparing me to? No.
Oh, I thought you were talking to me for a second. I'm like, I wasn't aware.
And Austin is saying he didn't want to watch the Jokers because he's kind of sick to death of the whole villains without the heroes sort of thing. So there you go. Let's recap. We will recap Dalton's. Dalton, your number 10, I believe, was Dune Part 2.
Yes.
Anybody going after me for liking Joker 2 on Sunday, just remember he put Dune Part 2 in his worst. Your number 9, what was that?
Gladiator 2.
It was, I have that all the way up at my number 17. Number 9 was Gladiator 2. Your number 8?
Was Argyle.
Argyle. Yeah, that was a swing and a miss. Number 7.
Was The Crow.
All righty. And number 6.
Borderlands.
Oh, I have that way up here at my number 11. Didn't even make my top 10, kids. Number 5. Oh, I remember that one because it's my number 5.
Yeah, the Lord of the Rings, War of the Rohirrim.
Number 4.
Was Craven.
Number 3.
Was Madam Web.
Zoinks, all the way up to my number 8. Number 2.
Was American Society for Magical N-Words.
And the number 1 worst for you was the Joker Part 2. All right. Yes. I did my top 20, and it was Afraid, then Gladiator, Challengers, Exhibiting Forgiveness, Mean Girls, Destroy All Monsters, No Way Up, Miller's Girl, Skincare, and Borderlines were 20 through 11. My number 10 is a Netflix film called Under Paris. My number 9 was Francis Ford Coppola's Megalopolis. You have to see this movie. Even though it sucks, you have to see this movie. Number 8 was Madam Web. Number 7 was Night Swim. Number 6 is It's What's Inside, a Netflix film you should avoid at all costs. Number 5, Lord of the Rings,
Rohirrim.
Lisa Frankenstein was number 4. Outlaw Posse, number 3. Don't Tell Mom the Babysitter's Dead, the remake, is number 2. And the worst freaking film of the freaking, I don't know, it might actually be the worst film of the decade. I kid you not, is The Crow. Okay, I make it a point. In order for me to review a movie, I have to watch an hours of it. If I don't watch an hour of it, I don't count it as being seen. You have to see at least an hour, okay? I did my due diligence. Where is it? There you go. I did my due diligence. I watched the hour, and I could not. It was, God, as much as I was checking the clock for being bored at Lord of the Rings, this movie kept pissing me off. First of all, they do the Eric Draven story. They don't need to, because this isn't the Eric Draven story.
There are other crows they could have gone with, or they could have made their own.
Is the very first Crow. And even the movie was loosely based because the story is a lot darker. James O'Barr, that's his name, right? James.
Yes.
O'Barr? I know it's O'Barr, but okay. Anyway,
yes.
He wrote that because his girlfriend died. And this was kind of like his love letter, you know, it was that. And it goes really deep and it goes dark. It really does.
Yeah.
They decided to use the names, but none of the story. None of the story aside from these two people meet. And I don't believe for a second that they liked each other, much less loved
No
each other.
chemistry, none
There was
whatsoever.
none
Yeah,
at all. I could not wait to not deal with these characters anymore. The villain was more charismatic than Skarsgård here, which is ridiculous because Skarsgård had 3 films out this year. Boy Kills World, this one, and Nosferatu. He was more charismatic as a monstrous vampire,
as Count Orlok.
yeah, than he was is the Crow here. And the one thing that Brendan Lee brought, and you know how much I have gone after Dalton when we're talking about these things. You can't do that. This is its own movie. And now I am absolutely 100% doing this. Brendan Lee made you believe that he was in love with the woman that he was in love with. And they spend more time with the couple in this movie than they did in the original. Was all flashback.
Yeah, it's like half the movie is just their romance story before we even get into Crow shenanigans.
And it was nothing, and it was a waste of time. They told the story through flashbacks. They told the romance through flashbacks. They told the romance through his dialogue with Winston Zedmore. I'm sorry, what's his name? The actor
Ernie Hudson.
Ernie Hudson, thank you. They had you knew they loved each other. You knew they loved each other from the little girl, the skateboarder, talking to Eric about both of them. You know, here you watch them for half an hour and it's like they fuck, but it's like it's the same thing as banging a stripper after she gets
out. There's no personal connection at all.
You know,
and if I may beat one of my periodic drums here, you know how I always go after movies for not properly stylizing and not making use of stylization or color or aesthetics in movies? This is a quintessential example of what I'm talking about, because people always undermine aesthetics or stylization and say it's surface level, but no, that is one of the things that gives your movie its soul, its character. And how we can tell is because the first Crow, the Brandon Lee one that everyone loves, and they love it for a very good series of reasons, a large part of what made that movie work so well was its stylization, was its aesthetic, was its trippiness, was its gothic overtones. This movie sucks out all of that. This movie is the most banal, stupid, vacant, depressing, airheaded lack of style for no good goddamn reason. It's not like there are not modern emos or modern goths they couldn't have like pulled aesthetics and stuff from. This movie plays like a movie where someone read what the original Brandon Lee one was on Wikipedia and never even saw a screenshot from it, because all of the style, all of the emotion, all of the aesthetic, everything about that movie that made it iconic or even good is sucked out and replaced with nothing in this movie. Nothing.
I get it. If you think Joker's worse, I can't say it. I mean, even on a technical level, what are we looking for? Oh, the basket. Excuse me, guys. Husband. All right. I mean, I'm being a husband, not that I have one. All right, there we go.
Low.
Why is your sock halfway off?
Oh, I was scratching. Goodness, I mean, heck, everybody's lucky my pants are buttoned up and zipped.
But anyway, while he's dealing with that,
what happens below the camera stays below the camera.
Yeah, the reason this movie isn't anywhere near my top is because, at the very least, with regards to the villain, they had some interesting ideas, but all that made me want to do is see a movie based on that character that wasn't a bad ripoff of a Crow movie. And again, there's absolutely no reason this had to be Eric Draven and Shelley.
No, because there were already sequels. As a matter of fact, I'm going to read some comments, and one of them is like, every other sequel is better than this remake. But yeah, this is the worst film of the year to me, absolutely hands down. And the reason why, what I was gonna do when I was bringing up the Joker, I think a lot of people don't like the Joker not because it's technically a bad film, but it really pissed you off because it was, the first one was going somewhere. Like there was a story.
The first one, yeah.
There was a story where he was influencing people. Like you are getting Antifa from the Joker by the end of the first movie.
Yeah, the literal insane clown posse. But
so I can understand people hating the film for basically the entire movie was a subvert.
Dumping on the first one.
I get it. This is why I hate The Crow so much. It's the same thing. It angers me. It is technically also, I would say it's technically a worse film than Joker, but it's also a movie that had a template and it completely ignored it. And it did not tell the story it's telling. If it was The Crow, if it was the Crow Part 6, Random City or Magic, whatever it was, because of the villain, I would understand a lot more. And this might not have been the worst, but it wasn't. And it is absolutely the worst film of 2024. Let's get some comments here. Let's see. Rebel Moon Part 2 was bad. I did not see Rebel Moon Part 2 because I watched Rebel Moon Part 1. I
saw both of them, but as I've said a couple of times, the only reason it's not here is because there was a lot of competition for bad movies this year. Yeah. Had I done a top 20 like Englentine did, which I could have done, but we were originally going to do top 10s, and he did his top 20 as a contingency, I think, more than anything.
Yeah, I put it there just in because you weren't responding to the message.
Yeah, but if I had done a top 20, things like Rebel Moon and Lisa Frankenstein and Megalopolis definitely would have been on there. It's just that there was a lot of competition for bad movies this year, and there were so many worse things than Rebel Moon that Rebel Moon didn't make my top 10. Which is in and of itself saying something about the state of the movie industry.
Yeah, there is a movie that where did I put it? I know I saw it. There's a movie that Tevye is bringing up also. Time Cut. That I think is in my C's somewhere. I kind of want to go through everything. I watched them. I want to fucking talk about them. Mm-hmm. Let's see. Rebel Moon, to me, makes 0 sense. They're both wonderfully shot, but needs a consistent story, says Crystal. I actually saw some reviewer on here, forget his name, say The Crow reboot was better than Joker 2. I kid you not. They're wrong. Okay, once again, I think from a technical standpoint of acting, directing, cinematography, the whole 9 yards, they're wrong. I think that Joker 2 is objectively a better made film. But I understand if you think it's worse because of how much it angers you. The Crow angered me more than Joker 2 because yeah, go on ahead.
It's like I was saying earlier, you have to try in order to fail, mm-hmm. and you have to try in order to piss people off, and that's why I think Joker. I'm not saying that Joker 2 is its cinematography is no worse than the first one. Right. It's like its background music is no worse than the first. Like on a technical filmmaking level, Joker 2 is fine. But as you might be able to tell by the fact that Dune Part 2 was my number 10, cinematography does not save you from my ire if everything else about the movie is pissing me off.
Let me get some comments because we're getting down to comic book cover ranking time. Let's see. Stug saying The Crow should have never been made. Leon is quoting the original movie. This one actually pisses me off. The Crow remakes that is what Dr. Admiral's talking about. The Crow remake didn't need to exist. Who wanted this awful Crow movie? Then we have Clint who says The Crow is good. You're smoking crack, sir. I do not. But hey, look, people like what they like. I'm gonna defend Joker 2 on Sunday. So there you go. The original Crow is a classic. This remake sucked and was unnecessary. The 94 Crow, says MK, was amazing. Let's see. But the remake, I will say, every sequel to the original Crow is much better than this remake, and that's saying something. Yeah, there's some bad.
Yeah,
sequels.
there's some bad sequels, but every single
Wasn't
one
the
of them
kid
is still
from
better than this
Terminator
movie.
in one of them? Let's see. Crystal Gia say I still have my original on VHS. In a Disguise says the original is so iconic it was a good movie, but the tragic death of Brandon Lee and the making of it puts it on another level. Should ever try to remake it? Let's see. Some films you just leave alone, like Casablanca, and yet Barbed Wire is a remake of Casablanca. We've got a comic book movie which remade Casablanca.
Well, and again, the issue is the Crow, much like the Ghost Rider, is a mantle that different people have worn. And honestly, if I were gonna make a Crow movie in 2024, and knowing how iconic the first one was, I would have made it an anthology movie and shown like the different eras of the Crow. We could have had a version of the Crow who was a cowboy. We could have had a version of the Crow who was like a medieval knight, etc., and so on. Doing different things with the Crow, or making it a better or a closer adaptation of the original source material, that I could justify. But doing a bad remake of the first one with all the color, style, and substance sucked out, yeah, no, screw that.
All right. I'm going to get this one, guys, only because I do have to take a little break between the videos here. But I will answer this question, and if you remember, you can. What was the first movie you've seen in the theater as a kid? Feel free to answer in the chat as well. This is hard for me because this is 40-something years ago. It's more of I can answer what I remember more than anything. What did you see? What was the first film you remember seeing in the theaters?
It's either Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone or it's Tarzan. Which one of those came first?
Tarzan.
Okay, so it was Tarzan. That's the first one I remember seeing in the theater. That's
a good movie to start with. For me, I know it's like Dalton is saying. What do I remember? I would have to look at the dates and everything, because I know I went and saw stuff like Robin Hood and the re-release of Robin Hood, and or maybe the original release of Robin Hood and Jungle Book and such. My mom worked at Disney, and one of the first films, we didn't go see it in a theater. We actually just went to a room, and they showed the employees Pete's Dragon before it came out. And I always counted that as one of my originals, but I don't know if it was, because it's just been so long and I might be remembering wrong. Because I remembered there were a few Disney movies that I was taken to as a kid, and those were them: Robin Hood, Pete's Dragon, and The Cat from Outer Space. But I think that might have been later. But I'll tell you what, I watched this is a time before VHS even. Anytime The Cat from Outer Space was in theaters, let's go. Jungle Book was my favorite film for a long time, but Pete's Dragon just floored me. I loved it. So it was one of those. Sorry, I can't nail it down to just one, because I just don't know. Just thinking about it, don't remember.
Even I had to think about it, because I couldn't remember if Tarzan came first or if Sorcerer's Stone came first.
But yeah, I remember us seeing an employee preview of Pete's Dragon. That was one of my favorite times, and Cat from Outer Space being one of my favorite films. That I would just, let's go to the movies. And then when it hit the dollar theater, it was a constant. Just we had more freedom, and even at 5 and 6, the kids, we would be running around, and I remember. We would search for bottles, take them to the store, and then we would go to the movies sometimes. I remember seeing that like on a constant loop almost. So yeah, that would be it. Clint is defending his opinion, saying the new Crow was great standalone film. I dissociate this Eric Draven from past this, and that's great. I'm glad it works for you. Once again, nobody likes the Joker, but I'm going to be defending it there. So I've only watched the first 2 episodes of Creature Commandos. I'm looking forward to seeing the rest. Let me go down here. My first movie was Cars. It was my 5th birthday. Damn, you're young too. Crystal saying the My Little Pony movie. Let's see. First movie, James and the Giant Peach. I love that movie. That is such a great movie. Summoner, Bambi. Was it re-release or the original? First movie I've seen at the drive-in was Dark Admiral March Hare. My favorite drive-in story. This did actually happen. We got to remember Vinnie Barbarino, very popular on Welcome Back, Kotter in the movie on TV. So he has this movie out. It's called Saturday Night Fever, and my mom thinks it's a great idea. Let's go take the family to see Saturday Night Fever. Well, after the 50-second fuck in the my pussy finger, my mom decides it's not for the kids. So what she does is she tells us to, okay, we're going to lay down. We're going to go to sleep. So, and we always brought pillows and blankets. I was small enough to fit in the back window. Now, for those of you old enough, those big ass, like the Cadillac kind of cars had back windows you could lay a small child in. And I was laying down. And the problem is I could still hear it. So even though she didn't want to watch it, oh, fuck you, that was going on in my ears. But the other screen I could see, because anytime I tried to roll over, and on the other screen, there was a women in prison film, and they were naked a lot. So on one side, I'm watching nudity, and then in my ears, I'm getting F you, and Bee Gees music. So yeah, that was a great night at the drive-in. First movie I remember seeing was Little Mermaid on VHS. That was Austin. Was born in 1991, so my memory could be fried at this point. Yeah.
If we're counting VHS and home viewing, then
yeah, no.
my first movie probably would have been Tim Burton's Batman or Batman Returns.
Addams Family. Yeah, dang, y'all are young. Tarzan from Austin. Sorcerer's Stone is as old as me. Yeah, wow. Okay. Oh, man, I watched Star Kid tons. The kids loved it. I think The Empire Strikes Back was the first one I saw in theaters. Let's see. Tarzan. Man, I love Dollar. Me too, Dark Admiral. Let's see. Okay, well, there we go. All right, guys. Tonight on the comic book cover rankings, we might be a little late. I have to hit the head here. But we're going to be doing Marvel team-up covers. So please join us for that at 10:30-ish. Okay. That being said, on Sunday, we agreed 2 o'clock, around 2 o'clock-ish.
Yep.
We're going to talk about the other movies that were released, including our top 10, maybe top 20 films. We're going to go as long as we want, basically. All righty. That being said, thanks for hanging out with us. And don't forget to do all the clicking and the liking. Please share. And as always, thank you very, very much for watching. You kids have a great night. And
Cheers,
see you in about 15 minutes. Do some Marvel team-up cover rankings.
Cheers, guys.
Bye. All righty. Fun times.